Davis steps under center. Gibson and McClendon behind it. Davis with motion by Richard. Will give the ball to McClendon. He leaps. Oh, he doesn't get in. He fumbled the football. Carolina holds. The game is over. And Carolina has won the game.
Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Wolford again. Wolford the other way at the 30, the 40. Wolford to midfield. Miles Wolford with the pick. The Heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory.
Left side of the line. Hood standing to Williams' right. Williams going to throw. One-on-one. Davis has it. Touchdown. Carolina wins. Carolina is the Coastal Division champion. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
Connor Barth for the possible win. Snap, spot, kick away, high enough, long enough. It's good! It's good! Carolina has won the game on a 42-yard field goal by freshman Connor Barth. Good gosh, dirty!
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast.
What's going on, guys? Anthony Pagnotta here, another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. Here, as always, Josh Marlowe joining me again today, and you know what that means when it's into not technically the offseason, but the downtime in between the bowl games, or once we get into the offseason. If he's here, it means there is roster news, and we've got plenty of it to discuss here today on this edition of the show. 5 Tar Heels make their draft decisions, also make their decisions on whether or not they will play in the upcoming bowl game in Charlotte against the West Virginia Mountaineers. 5 other players announced yesterday will miss the bowl game due to injury. We break that down. 2 players also that are intending on transferring out of the program will play in the bowl game. I have a couple of notes for you guys on the portal trail as to what Carolina is going to be doing. Some of the guys they'll be hosting this upcoming weekend. And we have to talk about Amari and Hampton receiving another postseason recognition, some more postseason recognition today as he just continues to roll those in after a tremendous season. So we'll let you know about all of that. But mainly, as we said, the biggest thing is what this roster is going to look like for the game against West Virginia. And that's where we got to start. As I mentioned, 5 Tar Heels officially make their draft decisions. It starts, of course, with Tez Walker. And we talked about that the last time that we were on here. And look, this was something that shouldn't have been that shocking to people, especially when you start to realize now, as we've gotten even further away from the decision, that most people see him as a second or third round guy. I don't think that it probably would even be in his benefit to come back to Carolina, because if he did, you'd be playing with an unknown quarterback. Or at least at the time of the decision, you're making it with the fact that you don't know much about either Connor Harrell. I mean, you know enough about Max Johnson, but you don't know what he'll look like in this system. So does it really benefit Tez to come back? Then, it is confirmed as of today that not only will he go to the NFL, that he will not play in the bowl game. We heard that last week as well from inside Carolina. So now we knew he was gone, but then yesterday, 3 decisions roll in really consecutively. Really, it was 4 decisions that roll in. It started with Cedric Gray. As expected, he accepted his Senior Bowl invite a while back. Now makes it official that he will, in fact, go to the NFL, and he makes the decision that he will not play in the bowl game. Shortly after that, Myles Murphy announces that he will forego his final season of eligibility. He will play, though, in the bowl game. So he'll stick around, suit up one more time for Carolina, try to get probably a little bit of extra film out there. He does not have an invite to any of the postseason showcase bowls. that would potentially allow him to show off his talent. So he's hoping that he can impress in the game against West Virginia and maybe open some eyes of some of these those bowl games out there to maybe get an invite. Drake May is the final one that made his decision that most people were talking about, the final one of the underclassmen that makes a decision, and he goes ahead, as we expected, and says not only is he entering the NFL draft, he is not going to play in the bowl game. Corey Gaynor also, now look, he did not have any eligibility left. He says that he is going to sit out the bowl game and that he is hoping to, pursue his goal of getting drafted. So really, I mean, you talk about these 5 guys. I don't think that Drake, Tez, Cedric Gray, any of those were really unexpected. Gaynor was gone after the season anyways. The fact that he's not playing in the game is something. That's interesting. I got to tell you, I've never seen a guy that's graduating sit out a bowl game, especially one that, I mean, maybe he has some NFL draft stock. I don't really know how high his draft stock is. I mean, looking at a lot of the draft boards, I haven't really seen him all that much on there. Miles Murphy is probably the most surprising one, though. Murphy's a guy that probably will get drafted, but you would imagine that he could have benefited from coming back. What did you make of the decisions that we saw yesterday from the guys that declared for the draft?
The first thing is that it's like they made them all within like a 2-hour span, and they wanted to announce whether or not they were going to play in the bowl game or not.
Can you help a guy out? Can you space him out? You had a whole weekend. You couldn't have done it over the course of a weekend, guys. Come on.
Not surprised by Drake, Tez, and Ced. We knew that they were pretty much going pro, and not worth in their instances the risk of playing in this bowl game. I think for Corey Gaynor, I think the biggest reason why, as we saw in the All Access show in the preseason, a close relationship with Drake. And so maybe he was just at the point where at the college level, the only guy he wanted to go on the football field with was with Drake May.
The only hands he wanted underneath his cheeks, as Peyton Manning was talking about last night on the Manning cast.
There's only so many men in the world you want their hands behind your cheeks.
There you go.
And I don't think Corey Gaynor, I think he's had enough hand-cheek action, if you will. The Miles Murphy one, just on all fronts, is just, to me, it's mind-blowing. Good luck in the NFL. Thank you for your contributions to Carolina football, which are few and far between. But the fact that you're declaring for the draft, but you're playing in the bowl game, tells you indirectly about your draft stock. It's not very good. And
well, I mean, yes. I mean, look, maybe he is a guy that really just likes playing for Carolina that much. I don't know.
Could he have shown more of that on the field on Saturdays? Because I didn't see that.
I got to be honest. I again, this is an argument over the talent and the motor. I don't think he's a guy that doesn't have the motor. I think he's a guy that you wonder. Again, I've said it, and if he really does have that good a draft stock, then you really have to wonder how much it says about the coaching. Because, I mean, we saw it a couple of years ago with the offensive line. Remember how bad Carolina's offensive line was in 2021, yet 2 guys off of that offensive line get drafted, one of them in day 2 of the draft. So, again, it points to we think the issue is with coaching. Now, with those guys, both of those guys got drafted to my NFL team. I've seen both of them play. Neither one of them are all that great, to be honest with you. Now, I think Joshua Zudu's probably played out of position. They've had to play him at tackle because that's how many injuries they've had. But the point is that at times you can tell by where some of these guys are on draft boards how people feel about the way that these guys were coached. They think the talent is there. And with Miles Murphy, I mean, we saw it show up at times. 2021, he was outstanding. He was a guy that I thought was about to be one of the better players in the ACC at the defensive tackle position. I mean, dude, we're talking about a guy that last year, Phil Steele had this dude as an All-American honorable mention in the preseason.
Yeah, he also one time had Ray Velwasik as a first, second, or third team All-ACC guy. How'd that work out for you? There's a reason why Phil Steele's a magazine writer
Ray Velwasik,
and not a football coach.
I mean, Ray Velwasik's a guy that you do wonder if he had ever been able to stay healthy early in his career, and even late in his career. He always got banged up. But, I mean, yeah, I don't know. That one was certainly interesting to me. And I got to be honest, for Miles Murphy and for Carolina, it's probably best on both fronts. I think Carolina needs new blood up front. I mean, I would like to see them start someone over Kevin Hester Jr., but I don't think they will. I want to see more push from the guys up front. The one thing that this does do, and now we're really going to learn where this young man stands. This pushes the door wide open for Travis Shaw.
It does.
Like this is your opportunity. Like I know people have felt like he's been buried on the depth chart. We've heard it the last couple of years. Mac Brown has said it, that he's a guy that needs to build up stamina to be able to play. And I've compared him, not talent-wise, but in terms of, just how many plays Carolina can play him because of the body style to what we saw from Jordan Davis. You got to be very strategic with how you use him. That's the thing, and we'll see. Maybe this is the year where he's finally able to get in a good enough shape where he can play a significant role. But that's the thing that you're looking at if you're Carolina, is that it opens that up. It also could mean that Carolina goes into the transfer portal and finds somebody at that defensive tackle spot. Him playing, I don't really care. I mean, I think it's one of those things where if Carolina really feels like they want to get a look at somebody, this should not stand in the way of allowing them to do so. They know he's not going to be back next year. You, of course, love the fact that he's out there playing, and you will use him because you are trying to win the game. But at the same time, if you want to see some of these younger guys rotate in, don't be afraid to put those guys out there and see what they've got going up against a good West Virginia team that will show you some things about these guys. Gaynor, I mean, yeah, it's odd, but I think the one thing, you kind of mentioned the relationship that he and Drake have, which could be part of it. The other thing is he could look at it and say, I don't want to stand in the way of whoever the center is going to be. More than likely, I would believe it's going to be Willie Lampkin. I'd be very shocked if they don't kick him over from guard and put William Barnes in there next to him. And Lampkin could be a guy that starts at center for Carolina next year, depending on how it's going. We told you last week, Ethan Mincer, a guy from North Texas, Carolina was pursuing him. They did offer him in the transfer portal. So that could be a guy they're taking a serious look at. But if they can't get him, moving Lampkin over, he succeeded there at Coastal Carolina. That was actually the spot he probably played his best at in his career when he was at Coastal. It wouldn't be a bad option for Carolina, and allowing him to maybe get some of that rapport with Connor Harrell could work out very well for Carolina. Now, what do you make of, and I didn't see a lot of this with Gaynor. I got to be honest, I don't think people are really as tied to him as they are to the other three. Not even really said. I think the two that most people were angry at, and we could bring Seth into this as well, because I think there's an angle to this that I really want to bring up with him. What do you make of the people? Again, we had these people that just went in on these dudes for choosing not to play in the bowl game. We talked about the situation with Tez on the last edition. This, to me, the people that are going after Drake May, what in the hell are we actually doing? So you're going after the most talented quarterback in the history of the program for not playing in a bowl game that, have you looked at the other guys that aren't playing in this bowl game? Have you looked at some of the guys, and we'll talk about the guys that are going to sit out here. What would be the motivation for Drake May to play in this game, being that he is a guy that's probably a top 5 pick?
Yeah, look, most of these people that are complaining are, in their late 40s, early 50s. I got to take a blue pill to get it up, and they have nothing else better to do.
Well, one of them was a woman, so I would hope she's not.
Guys, it's 2023. okay? 15 years ago, you had an argument because this didn't happen. You had the BCS. And in the BCS days, bowl games, even outside of the BCS bowls, meant more than they do today. We talk about this every year. The only bowl games that matter are the college football playoff bowl games and the New Year's Six bowl games.
Which, I mean, how much are those going to matter after next year?
Like, outside of that, most of these games, you're playing them for because it's tradition, like the Sun Bowl, the Gator Bowl.
Well, you're playing them for monetary reasons,
Yeah, I mean,
and
look,
you're
you're getting great bowl gifts. There's for these coaches, there's a big bonus that goes into if they win the game.
Extra practice time.
Like that's the benefit, and
Yep.
so I just don't get it. Drake May is going to be at worst a top 5 pick in next year's draft.
Mm-hmm.
That's at the worst. Why would he risk his body, his millions, future generational wealth in a game that does not matter?
Well, I mean, I said it. I'm pretty sure I said it the last time, or maybe I've just been thinking it. At this point, I can't really tell. I mean, my thing is like if he wanted to play in the game, great. Awesome. Just like with Sam. Okay, play in the game. You want to play, it's in your hometown. You want to try to go out on top at Carolina or, with a win at Carolina. I wouldn't have blamed him. All right, great. Play in the game. We'll enjoy it. Gives us a great, a chance to win the game. We'll love it. But I can't fault the kid for making this decision and saying, I'm going to sit out. And again, this is another thing that people have to step back and realize. We are not there when they have conversations with these kids. Now, I don't think this would be the conversation with Drake, but with some of these other guys, when they make these decisions, I would assume that they say, hey, are you going to the NFL?
Well,
yeah.
And I mean,
look, we want to get a look at so-and-so. Like, potentially, like, let's talk about Sed. And I don't know if they would tell Sed this. Again, Sed is a Charlotte guy. If he wanted to play in this bowl game, they probably would say, okay, you can play in this bowl game. But would it be out of the realm of possibility that they could have said to him, hey, man, we really want to get a look at Amari Campbell because we think he could be our guy, but we also need to know if we need to find somebody that fits the position that you're leaving behind a little bit better than he does in the transfer portal. Is that insane?
I mean, guys, you got to remember that in 1984, Dean Smith told Michael Jordan to go pro.
Yes.
To a guy that became the greatest basketball player of all time that wanted to come back for a senior season.
Well, Mac Brown said it before, too. He said it, I think it was with Sam. He said, yeah, if he's got NFL draft stock, he needs to get. Like, Mac Brown looks at this the way that you would hope most coaches do. Now, again.
With the best interest of the player in mind first.
Yes, and as fans, we think, okay, we want to see wins, which is the mindset that you should take towards it. But at the same time, like, guys, you have to step back and get a little perspective here. Like, the fact that you are trashing a kid that is a Tar Heel through and through, for these people that are questioning this, well, I saw this one account, this one woman that, I mean, people are just absolutely roasting this woman, and rightfully so, who called him a loser, a quitter, and a liar. You do realize that this is a kid that could have taken how many millions of dollars to go to Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. He could have gone wherever he wanted to, and he decided to stay in Chapel Hill. So if you question the commitment of this kid, and she's questioning, well, down the stretch of the season, he looked like a guy that had just quit because he knew he was going to the NFL. He did not look like a guy that just quit. He looked exactly like the guy at the end of last year that did not have the help around him, mainly on his offensive line, and wasn't able to move the ball. Like, I can't get on that level. And I know for a lot of people, this is a sore subject. As you mentioned, it's a lot of the older generation.
Yep.
They believe that you made a commitment, you should stick it out. I mean, there's people that have told me that Drake May, they hate Drake May because he isn't staying all 4 years.
I mean, like, here's my thing.
What?
If this was a New Year's Six bowl game, you have an argument.
And
Because
let's be honest. If this was a New Year's Six bowl game, would he sit this game out?
No, he would have played. Because
would he? Another one. If they win the game against State, and this is for 10 wins, you think he sits the game out?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
I think he plays because he could get to double-digit wins.
No. I still think because you would have been playing in maybe the Holiday Bowl again, the Russell Athletic Bowl. Like, you're still playing in a third-tier bowl game.
Gator Bowl, maybe Pop-Tart.
But, that's the thing, guys. Like, this game, it doesn't matter. Like, if Carolina...
And the fan base is showing you that. And don't say, well, that's because we know all these guys are out. You guys would not have gone to this bowl game even if these guys had played. You wouldn't.
If Carolina wins, congrats. We won 9 games. If Carolina loses, no one's going to be heartbroken they lost a bowl game to West Virginia, and you shouldn't be.
Well, okay. So, and we'll talk more about this when we get to the actual game. A win for Carolina in this game does do a lot.
It does a lot now with all the guys that are sitting out and all the guys that are now forced to play.
Yeah, it does a lot, and I'm going to be honest, it does a lot for Mac Brown.
Like
that would be what that would do. But for these guys,
if Drake May, Tez Walker, Sedgrave, if those guys play and Carolina won the game, it ultimately doesn't mean anything. Because
I still think it would mean something for Mac Brown.
Because those guys are going to be gone next year.
Yeah.
This is as a Carolina fan. When you play in bowl games now, and this is the 8-4 is the expectation here. This is what we want. These are the type of bowl games Carolina football is going to play in on a year-in, year-out basis. What you should be excited to see is what your team next year is going to look like. And this game is going to offer us that. We're going to get a look at Connor Harrell, who could be your starting quarterback next year. We're going to see different guys among the offensive line, among the defensive line, at linebacker. We're going to see other guys play in this game.
It'll show you your gaps where you need to go into the portal.
So yes. And I said this in the last episode, and I said people are going to get mad. It's not in the best interest of the player that Drake May plays, and it's not in the best interest of the program that Drake May were to play.
You're probably right.
This is a program that needs to figure out, how are you replacing this guy? The only way you figure that out is if he doesn't play and you have the guy on the roster who's next in line to take over him, if you give him 15 practices and a game to go evaluate him. That's the only way that happens. And so, for all you old Carolina fans, just get a grip. When Carolina plays in these bowl games,
yep,
their NFL talent players most likely are not going to play, and that is okay. Now, look, if Carolina gets to a college football playoff and a dude sits out, we'll sit here and have a conversation.
Still hasn't happened at any other school, by the way, so it would never happen at Carolina.
If Carolina's playing, and even in the expanded playoff world, but
not going to happen.
A premier, a tier 1 bowl game, and a guy sits out, maybe we have a conversation.
Well, I'm going to let you in on a hint. The tier 1 bowl games will be the playoff.
I am not going to sit here.
Yep.
And complain about a player skipping the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Not going to happen. You can get mad at me. Most of
the fans are skipping the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
I don't care enough to be mad at a kid making a decision that's best for him, because if you do what it's the hardest thing to do is to put yourself in their shoes, would you be turning down potential generational wealth to play in a game that doesn't matter? And dude, when it comes to Drake, if you don't think this decision hurt for him to come to this conclusion that not only am I going pro, but I'm not going to play in the bowl game, then you don't know who Drake May is. It's a lifelong Tar Heel. This was a guy that father played quarterback at Carolina. His brother won a national title for the basketball team at Carolina. The May name is synonymous with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Yep.
So it's deep down going to kill him. But I also think, as much as we sit here and we complain about Mac Brown, this is another positive of Mac Brown. Because in these instances when a player might be selfish and is probably begging to put on that uniform, Mac Brown knows the deal. He knows what's up. I would imagine that Mac Brown looked him in the face and told him, it's not in your best interest that you play. It's not worth it. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Thank you for everything you've done for our program. Carolina football is better because of you. Now go to the next level, make your millions, and make a name for yourself in the NFL.
Go to the next level, go through the draft process, and become the first ever number 1 overall pick. That's probably the mindset that Mac Brown takes. Hey, if you're wanting to put your focus into something, then go ahead and do that. It's unbelievable. It's such an entitled mindset and it's not just our fans, but this is who we see every single year because we're in it. We talk about it every single year. We write about it every single year. My thing is okay, so if you're saying that these people are quitting on the team, then go to Charlotte, buy tickets, and support the team. Then you sit in the stands. You better not be, if you're one of those people on social media complaining about this, you better not be one of those people that decides, I'm not going to the game. Because what does it matter? And you can't use the excuse that, those players gave up on the program, so should I. Really? Because you're the ones that are preaching to them that they need to be better. So shouldn't you lead by example? You're an old head. You should be, committed through and through, right? That's the way you're supposed to be. Nobody's saying that they're not committed. You don't hear these guys saying, well, see you, Carolina, never coming back. No, I think all these guys are incredibly grateful for their time here, but it's as you said, it's in the best interest for each one of these players that they sit this game out, that Carolina gets a look at what they've got next year. They can figure out if they've got the right quarterback. At other positions, they could figure out if they need to go into the transfer portal, if they're good with what they got, and you go from there. Now, one of the other challenges in the bowl game is going to be the injury issues. Carolina yesterday, on top of the announcements from the guys that we just talked about, released the news that 5 other players will miss the bowl game due to injury. The most significant, Bryson Nesbitt and John Copenhaver, both of Carolina's starting tight ends, will not play in this game with lower body injuries. Same thing with Zach Rice, the backup interior offensive lineman who could have potentially gotten a look in this game if they were going to move Willie Lampkin over to center. Elijah Huzzy, the starting nickelback, not really shocking, especially after we saw him miss the game against NC State. And Will Hardy also. All 5 guys dealing with lower body issues. The most significant thing here is that a tight end, so no Nesbitt, no Copenhaver, no Kamari Morales. That means 98.7% of the snaps that were taken by tight ends this year will not be available for this bowl game. You also don't have true freshman Julian Randolph, who's the future of the position. He suffered a lower body injury at the end of fall camp, will not play. So that means that Carolina does not have a scholarship tight end on the roster. And that means that there will be a May that plays in this game. He's a different May, different legacy player. Deems May III will more than likely be the team's starting tight end. He's a walk-on. He's played 11 snaps this year. You'll have, a couple other guys, Cal Tierney, as well as Court Halsey will be available. Don't really know how much those guys are going to play. Those guys are walk-ins. But again, it's going to be really interesting to see how Carolina handles the fact that they are pretty much not going to have tight ends in this game.
Yeah, going to see a lot of 4 wide receiver sets and a lot of 5 wide receiver sets.
Got to see a lot of heavy packages on rundowns. I'd expect to see extra O-linemen in there at times, probably.
Yep. And that's just part of this is that you would probably imagine that Nesbitt, Copenhaver, probably were playing through nagging injuries at the end of the season.
Yeah,
because,
you'd probably think so.
As much as they were involved in what Carolina was doing in the run game and in the pass blocking game, and in Carolina's mind, it's probably better for them to maybe get those guys healthy because spring ball is going to be very important. Because you're going to have a new quarterback, you might have some changes on the offensive side of the ball. Better just to protect their bodies for next year as opposed to putting them out there in this game, but. This is the reality of bowl games now. Like, you're going to and Carolina won't be the only team that goes into a bowl game this year in this type of situation.
Dabo Sweeney, in his press conference earlier today, said he has no cornerbacks.
Yeah,
now, that's not true. He's got Avian Terrell. He listed him as one of the guys. He said, yeah, we got Avian. I'm like, do you know he's played corner the whole year for you.
I mean, you have a cornerback. I mean, but you
got one.
You
but
typically play with 3 on the field at the same time. Well, that's just the reality of it with the transfer portal, the way that it is. And I think this is why if you could maybe make a subtle change for the portal, you'd probably change the window to after the bowl season, especially if you want these bowl games to have a little bit more meaning to them.
Well, it would also give certain guys a chance to that are buried on depth charts to potentially show themselves on their way out.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just the reality of the situation, and again, now it's not an ideal situation for Connor Harrell, but if he goes out there with no scholarship tight end and he looks the part, it makes it easier for you to be excited about what next year can be as our expectations will adjust and get back to where realistic expectations are for this program. So, it probably sucks the most for Zach Rice because this maybe could have been a really good chance for him to cement himself.
Yeah,
as a potential starter going into next year. We know what Elijah Huzzy brings to the team. We know what he brings, to this defensive backfield.
Yep.
And, I think I've saw enough of Will Hardy that I didn't have to see him ever again and be satisfied.
Jeez. I wouldn't go there. I mean, we've seen flashes from Hardy. Look, I think for Rice and Hardy, it's the guys you feel the most for because Hardy's a guy that's going to be challenging to be one of the starters at safety next year. Zach Rice, that felt like that could possibly be an opportunity, although we don't know. We don't know what they were going to do with Ed Montelis and William Barnes, who will both be gone at the end of the season. So I don't know if they were planning on rotating Zach Rice in there a little bit. I probably would have to see what you got in him. Elijah Huzzy, the interesting thing about Huzzy is with him out, don't have DeAndre Boykin still, who's out for the season after the groin injury that he suffered back in fall camp. That means that Carolina will have DJ Jones, who entered the transfer portal yesterday, as their starter in this game. Or at least that is the expectation. Now, Caleb Cost will probably play a little bit here as well. He's been the backup, or he was the backup to DJ Jones last week, in the last game, I should say, against NC State. That one will certainly be interesting. I think DJ Jones is a guy that stuck around. Mac Brown's talked about it. He talked about it a lot this offseason. He could have transferred last year to try to play running back. He made the move to defensive back. He's helped Carolina at times this year. I mean, he started 2 games for Carolina, including that season finale against NC State. And look, he was not the reason that Carolina lost that game. There were many other reasons as well. But I think it'll be interesting to see if they utilize him really because they don't have any other choice because Cost hasn't played a lot, or if they just lean on the young true freshman, see what they've got in him, and try to find a way to still hold their own defensively. Jefferson Boaz also in the same boat. He entered the transfer portal, but he will play in the bowl game before transferring. Now, the interesting thing with Boaz and something to monitor with him is that many may remember when he came to Carolina as a recruit, there was a camp in the summer right before he committed. Carolina wanted him to go through drills as a tight end. He looked really good. Carolina brought him in. That's where some people for a while thought he was going to play. He then tells them when he gets on campus, look, quarterback's the position that I've always played. I really want to try to give it a go at quarterback. Okay. They allow him. He's been there since he got on campus. You wonder in this game, though, where Carolina is so shorthanded with tight ends, if Jefferson Boaz potentially gets a look at tight end. Honestly, how much can it really hurt you? Don't think he'll be in many blocking situations, but maybe throwing him out there, seeing if he can affect the game in some way might be worth a try if you just don't feel that confident in the other guys that you have. But I got to tell you, there are a lot of areas that I'm interested to see with this team. It's really going to be like watching a spring game, but it's also going to be cool to see certain guys get opportunities. And one that I'm looking forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to be out there is Deems May the 3rd. I think that'll be really cool, especially in his hometown, played at Myers Park. This is where his family lives. To do it in front of his dad, I think, would be a really cool thing if he can go out there. I'm not saying I expect him to tear it up. But if he can have a couple of catches, something like that, maybe even find the end zone, that would be really, really cool. As we get out of here, let me give you a couple of updates on the transfer portal. This is two things confirmed today by Don Callahan of Inside Carolina. Joey Slackman is expected to take an official visit to campus this weekend. He is, of course, the defensive tackle out of Penn we've told you about, wanted by pretty much every big-name program in the country. This dude is looked at as the next Braden Fisk, which, if you don't know who that is, that's a guy who came from Western Michigan last year. Now, certainly the Ivy League is more of a step up. We've learned that with Spencer Rolland. But you're talking about a guy that was just about as dominant as you can be in the middle of the defensive line as a nose tackle. Boy, would he be a welcome addition to that room to take the place of Miles Murphy if it works out. Two other guys that are expected to visit this weekend. This one was actually confirmed earlier by Matt Zientz of 24/7 Sports. Nyland Green, the former five-star cornerback that committed to Georgia out of high school, entered the transfer portal. Of course, Carolina immediately linked to him. He is expected to take a visit to campus this weekend. Don Callahan also had that first. And also another one that Don Callahan expects will be on campus for this weekend is the brother of Tar Heel transfer quarterback commit Max Johnson, the tight end Jake Johnson. So Carolina could be looking to add to that room sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, even if they add Jake Johnson, he will not be allowed to play in the bowl game. So we'll have to roll with that group that we told you about. One last note before we get out of here, I want to say congratulations to Amarian Hampton, who continues to roll in the postseason recognition. Last week, first team honors from the Walter Camp Football Foundation, first team All-American honors, I should say, from the Walter Camp Football Foundation. And second team honors, he rolled in the Associated Press today. And then last week, CBS Sports and Sports Illustrated also had him amongst their second team All-Americans. So getting the recognition that he should. It just sucks that the regular season had to end the way that it did against NC State. You feel like if he would have put up a big performance, he would have had his work cut out for him, but you feel like there was at least a chance that he could have taken home the Doak Walker Award. Unfortunately, he falls short of that, but he'll have a chance to come out and put together a really strong bowl game to close things out. You'd imagine they'll lean pretty heavily on him, especially with the fact that they will be so shorthanded on weapons. So that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the podcast. Hey, head over to the website, guys. Check out all the stuff that we got up there for you. Got an article up there about Amarian and all the recognition that he's receiving at this time. Also, article that goes a little more in-depth on the 5 guys that are going to miss the game due to injury, what Carolina will be looking at those position groups in terms of trying to replace them in this game. We have all of the guys that made their draft decision. Make sure you go and check out all those articles as well. We break each one of those down, tell you what the outlook of each room is now that these guys are heading to the NFL. So all of that stuff and plenty more are going to be up there on the website, HeelToughBlog.com, including an article that I'm working on right now for you guys, which will sort of break down what each room will look like in the bowl game. I know there's been a ton of movement. It's a little confusing for people to keep up with. So I'm going to lay out, each position room, who's available for this game, who's out for this game, and the reasons why they're out for this game, all that kind of stuff, so you know who to look for when the team takes the field in Charlotte on December 27th. We'll, of course, have you covered here on the podcast and over on the website as well when the game rolls around with a preview, recap, and then once the season is over, it will be time for the final grades. We hand them out every year, just like we do with the midseason grades. Not going to be quite as positive as the ones that we handed out midseason when this team was 6-0, but you won't want to miss any of that stuff. And on the basketball side of things, Carolina getting back into non-conference play here later on this week on Saturday against Kentucky. Another huge game for Carolina. Josh has you covered on the website. Of course, he'll have you covered with the Oklahoma game as well as the Charleston Southern game. And then once Carolina gets into conference play, it's full tilt the rest of the way. And we'll, of course, have you covered on the Four Corners podcast. Make sure you check that podcast out, along with this podcast, at any of the major podcasting platforms. Just search either one of the podcast names, and you'll find them. And when you do, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. In terms of the video editions of the podcast, we will definitely have a video edition for the preview and recap of the bowl game. But outside of that, I have no idea. We are still trying to figure it out. The internet connection at the house is a complete disaster. I don't understand why they can't get out there and fix it. I'm not going to go on a soapbox rant, though, here on the podcast. But just know we are working behind the scenes to try to get that back up and running for you guys. So, once again, that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. I want to thank Josh for hosting with me. I want to thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Tar Heels!